Joining me today, I have Winnipegger and Christian artist Heather Rosen. Thank you, Heather, for taking the time.
I'm so excited to be here.
I would love for you to tell me a little bit about how you grew up in Winnipeg and then how you ended up in the U.S. And I believe country music had something to do with it as well. Go ahead and share a little more.
Yeah, I grew up in Winnipeg. I grew up in North Kildonan. I went to Miles Mac Collegiate. My mom actually still lives in the same house I grew up in. So I'm staying in my childhood home right now.
Nice.
Which is really cool. I saw my best friend from high school 2 days ago. So I had a great childhood growing up in Winnipeg. I always sang around the city at the clubs, the bars, the competitions, Rainbow Stage, all of that Winnipeg stuff. I did all of that. But after high school, I started recording my original music, and two very respected contacts of mine in the music business separately told me that I should be moving to Nashville. And because I was very, very serious about what I was doing, I followed that instruction and I was obedient to that. And so I ultimately moved there. I got there. I found out I was indeed a good songwriter, but not a great songwriter. So I spent my time in Nashville honing my songwriting craft and continuing to pursue singing.
That's amazing. Okay, and then time went by. How did you come to faith, and what happened with that music in Nashville?
Okay, so I'm gonna give you the the cliff notes of how I came to faith because it's such a long story, but it's a beautiful story. So I went to church as a child. My parents brought me to church. My father was actually a minister for a little bit, but I never had the revelation of Jesus on the cross, and I never understood relationship with Jesus. So it was really just something habitual that we did. And at 16, I had my official falling out with church, and I distanced myself from anything that called itself Christian. And I went off to find God for myself. And I went into New Age. I went into drugs. I went into all kinds of different explorations trying to find God. And this went on for a good 15 years. Fast forward a little bit to when I was dating my now husband. We were at an all-time low. We were on the verge of breaking up. And I was very heartbroken. Heartbroken with my whole life, to be honest. Heartbroken in the relationship, with my career, with my bank account. It was just all broken. And long story short, I ended up meeting who is now my spiritual father, and he gave us counsel in this time. And what I saw inside of this man was something I had never encountered before. And I remember sitting there listening to him thinking, wow, if Jesus is real, then I think I just met him in this man. And I had never had something like that happen. So that was incredibly convicting, and I was open to, find God wherever he was. And so the curiosity led me to go to this man's church. And when I walked in the church, it was like this feeling of, wow, I'm home. And everyone was shining from within in this way that I had never seen. And all of it was genuine. I witnessed miracles in there, and I heard revelation that answered questions that I had had my entire life. And ultimately, I encountered God in this church, and it very quickly flipped my entire life upside down. But I was coming on this broken ground, and I was so broken that, having not understood relationship with Jesus in the past, I was starting to grasp what it was from what they were teaching. And I said to God, I said, listen, I am so broken. I am so sad. I do not see how you're going to fix this. I don't think anyone can fix this, but they tell me that you're a healer. They tell me you're a restorer, a redeemer. And so I'm here, and I'm going to let you show me.
That's amazing. Was that in Tennessee?
That actually happened in LA. I spent several years in Nashville, and then I ended up going to LA on a trip, and I was so in love with it. I kind of dreamed of LA ever since I was a child. I was obedient to that push to Nashville, but the dream was always LA for me. And when you've dreamed of something your entire life and you get there, and normally it can't possibly exceed your expectation because it's been so high. Well, it did. So I went there and exceeded my expectations, and I was like, I really think I'm supposed to live here for this next chapter of my life. So I relocated to LA, and that is where I found my church.
Amazing. Is that where you met your husband as well?
Yes, I met my husband writing.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay, so many years passed when you wrote songs. What prompted you to start writing again, and writing this time for Jesus? It sounds like.
Yeah, good question. So writing is actually the one thing that stayed constant for me. It was singing that stopped, and I had always written for other people and myself. So I got to a place where it felt like I was banging my head against a steel door constantly. And again, broken, disappointed, felt like failure, felt like there was no way this was ever actually going to pay me back for all the time and the money and the separation from my family and putting it above relationships. It didn't feel like music was paying me back whatsoever. So I decided to stop. I just hit the end of my own strength. I gave it everything I had and I was out. And I stopped, and the devil really got in my head at that point where I not only stopped, but I believed that I couldn't sing. Nobody ever wanted to hear me sing. I should be completely done singing. It will not affect anyone, do anything for anyone, just stop. So even in my writing sessions, I would shy away from singing the demo because I didn't even think that the person in the room with me wanted to hear me do it. I fell deeply into that and backed into the background as a writer and let everybody else shine. And I thought that I was going to do that for the rest of my life. Around the time that I found the church that I was just speaking of, Revelation Church, I was very quickly called into worship. Immediately, basically. God gave me no time to adjust. And he said, you're not only going to sing worship, you're going to lead worship. My first time on stage for worship was leading worship. And I was completely unqualified. And you know how they talk about God qualifies the called? I was so unqualified, but it was just another way for me to lean into him and rely on him. And he really taught me about that. I was like, listen, I can't do this. So you're going to have to raise me in this, teach me this, because I know I don't know what I'm doing. This is not the same thing as performing, you know?
Yeah.
And I actually used to lead worship with just my eyes closed the entire time. And because I was too afraid to look at anybody and I was too afraid to do it wrong. So I was like, all I know is that this is for you. So I'm just going to close my eyes and just look at you. And so I started doing worship, and he did raise me in that. And then one day I started getting songs dropped in me. Again, the way that I used to get songs dropped in me. And I was looking at these songs being like, wait a second, these are artist songs, God. Like these are artist songs. These are like my heart, my testimony, my heart as an artist, but as a Christian. And I realized that he was calling me to step back into that. And he had given me an entire album, if not albums, an entire direction and an entire audience waiting for this music. So as much fear as I had associated with it, I even had a little bit of trauma associated with it, a lot of insecurity. He knew that. And so he said, you know, it's okay, do it again, but this time do it with me.
That's amazing. I love hearing people's testimony and how God weaves things together. Tell me a little bit about this new single that CHVN is currently playing, Better Rain. Tell me about the inspiration behind it.
Okay, well, we were parked in our car actually, in our home city, and we were listening to great songwriter songs. My husband and I, we were getting inspired by just great writers. And he said, "Do you know the song Better Rain by George Strait?" And I said, "No, I don't." And I thought about it for a second. I said, "Wait, babe, is this song about God?" And he was like, "No, not really, no." And I was like, "Babe, if any song should be a Christian song, it's Better Rain. Like, I can't even see that song a different way." I'm like, Better Rain. And the whole thing downloaded in me right there in the car. And I was like, but better rain, water before coming to Christ. You know, that's tears, it's strife, it's the sweat from your own strength, like I just talked about. And after coming to Christ, it's cleansing, it's baptism, it's harvest. And I just got the whole song in the car right there, and my husband and I wrote it out. Here Comes a Better Rain, and we released it September 14th.
And we are loving playing it on our station.
Amen.
So, yeah.
And I was telling you before the interview started that we heard it coming from the airport with my mom driving me, and that was so special to me.
That's amazing. I'm so glad you got to, have that moment of this is my song
Yeah.
on the radio.
I screamed, but
I love it. I also have to ask, you recently went to the GMA Dove Awards. Tell me what that experience was like.
okay, that was a total God thing, like everything is. But I had just released Better Rain 2 weeks before. So I really, without God, had no business being there. I actually went to serve my friend who was working the red carpet. So I was helping set up like a tripod and stuff like that and helping her with her camera. And then I believe that that God will put you in the place that he wants you as long as you take the steps to show up. And so I showed up, but I showed up in a really nice white suit and my makeup done and my hair done. And he actually made a way for me to get on the red carpet and do some interviews. And that was a really, really cool experience. But what was even cooler to me about the Dove Awards, the coolest thing to me was that I've been to the Grammys, I've been to the CMAs, I've been to CCMAs. I've never been to an award show where they prayed before they started. I've never been to an award show where the artists would rather talk about God than themselves.
Right?
And everybody was speaking, everybody was preaching. When they would get on the mic, they would preach. I even saw a lot of the press interviews. So I was just very, very happy and encouraged as an artist entering this, if you can call it a genre, this genre of music, because it really affirmed to me that, okay, we're all here for the same purpose. We're all here for the glory of God. We're all here to spread the gospel and to save souls.
Beautiful. I'm so glad that you enjoyed your time. You were talking about albums that got downloaded. So we've got your new single. Is there more to come?
There's so much more. Like,
Awesome.
I have this one album. I got several more just sitting inside of me right now. But yeah, I have a Christmas song coming out next month that we're finishing right now. And then I have an album called Late Bloomer coming out in 2025.
Nice.
And that is basically the prayer life and the inner dialogue of a new Christian. I compare a lot of coming to Christ with coming of age and the hope of the future, but the grief of leaving behind what you knew, the fear associated with it, but the joy at the same time, right? And so it explores those feelings and those themes. And I hope that the album can be a bridge for new Christians everywhere.
I love that. Heather, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's been a pleasure for me. Thank you.